What's up, everybody? The Forge, the Forge. Everybody's been wanting to know, what is the Forge? We see you posting these videos. There's a big old building you walking through. We see the hashtag Forge. We see the post. Quit stringing us along. What's up with it? And those of you that do know about the Forge, you've been asking me, well, when you're launching, what do you need? How can we help? And I want to let all of you know all those things, but that's going to be in the next video. For this video, I just wanted to show you help you to kind of see the journey we've been on to get here to this launching stage of the Forge. Because I think if you see the journey, you'll better understand how much what we're going to be doing means to us. How much the people group that we want to reach means to us. Most of you guys know that I came out of addiction all through my teenage years into my 20s, and then I surrendered my life to Christ, and that's a whole nother story in and of itself. But God ran me down out in the streets, and I surrendered to Him, and then I started going to church. I did street ministry for couple years because that's where I felt the most comfortable at, is being in that cross section of our culture that I came out of. And during that season, man, God was doing a work in me and my wife's life, transforming us. And then after a couple years, I came on staff at a local church in Zachary, the Rock Church, as their children's pastor. And then I became their youth pastor, and then it just kind of progressed from there. But because I always had a heart for outreach, I did a lot of things like our recovery ministry, our homeless ministry, our prison ministry, our community serve days, our widow serve days. And I had a great group of volunteers that had the same kind of heart that helped us during all those years and all those ministries, and I'm grateful for them. But all along that time, God was just speaking promises to our hearts about things that was to come, things that we were going to, that it promises of where we were going to go in life, the people we were going to be able to reach. And most of you guys know that if you're a pastor of a staff pastor at a local church, mainly most of your responsibilities is to care for the people that are inside of that church. The people that go to that ministry, that worship there. And that's what most of my time was given to. But each week, man, I was having these people coming in out of substance abuse, out of addiction, whose lives were just destroyed, just bombarding me. Or the family members or the loved ones of people in substance abuse that are watching the person that they love's life just crumble in front of their eyes. Or I'm attending the funerals or performing the funerals of people who are dying tragically way before they should. And our hearts just broke over that. And most people know, I mean, ever since we've come to God, we've had people live in and out of our house. We've taken in, individuals struggling with addiction. We've taken in families that the parents struggle with addiction. We've taken in kids that had parents that struggle with addiction. Atheist drug addict. Had one of those live with us one time. So it's our heart. It's what we want to do. But as a staff pastor, the time that we were able to dedicate to that was very limited. And it just grieved us to watch so many people fall through the cracks, to watch so many families be destroyed, so many marriages be destroyed, so many kids not have their mom or their dad, so many moms and dads not have their son or daughter, so many brothers and sisters not have their sibling, so many people dying. And then seeing so many places that were supposed to be set up to help people in this condition really just be using these people as a form of income, as a way to make money, as a business, or using them as workforce just to grow their business off of their struggle. And along the way in 2015, I think it was January or February of 2015, right before I went to bed one night, God asked me, He said, what would you do if I required the ministry of you? If I asked you to step away from ministry for a season, would you be okay with it? Would you surrender to that? Would you, or would you not do that? And man, I struggled with that because I didn't know what He meant by it. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't, because that's scary when God asks you an open-ended question like that. So after a couple of days of just wrestling with God, I finally said, God, I'll trust you with the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how of our lives. And I just trust you that you got a purpose in it. Not knowing that a year later, whenever I told our pastor about the vision of the Forge in 2016, he said, all right, well, then go after it. And so, man, we jumped. And whenever I say we jumped, we jumped. 43 years old. I have a wife. I have 4 kids. I have no skill set for the workforce because I was a junkie. Then I became a pastor. And so here I am, and I got to get a job ASAP. And I'm just grateful that I had men in my life that I was in their life through being involved in their personal lives, that helped me out in this time and hired me knowing I didn't know anything. But man, I gave it my all wholeheartedly to do the best that I could. And man, I was overwhelmed. I was underqualified, but man, God was faithful. And in every one of those jobs, I ended up being in a leadership position that was even more stressful and overwhelming. But God was faithful every time. And during this time, it was almost like God put an umbrella up. Like the phones quit ringing. I did no ministry. Like I went from like people blowing my phone up every week. I need help. I'm struggling, to nothing. But thank God he had already kind of prepared me a year in advance that this was the season I was going to be going into, so that I could deal with it. And also in this time frame, we had acquired a house in Zachary. And this place was a dump. It had been sitting there for years and years and years. It was the eyesore of Main Street. And we had got that place in hopes that that's what we was going to launch the Forge in. But I had to work. I couldn't get there. I couldn't work on that house yet because I was having to work to support our family. And in this time frame, my wife ended up getting a job. She had been a stay-at-home mom and housekeeper for like 16 years. And she had got a job. And so I guess about a year in, I was on my way home from work one day and I was just crying out to God. And I was like, God, I know we did what you told us to do. We know we've been obedient to you and that you've put these promises in our heart. But I feel like we're no closer there than when we stepped out in obedience a year earlier. And I'm confused. I'm discouraged. I don't know what to do. And man, I'm just whining and complaining and crying to God. And then finally I shut up and I call it my Mr. Miyagi moment, where God showed me that he had trained me for a year so that I could remodel that house. And so I go home, I tell my wife, and she says, well, then quit your job and do it. But no banks would loan us the money to do it. And so, an awesome couple privately loaned us the money to remodel this house. And so I quit my job. We jumped in. My dad helped me. And then from time to time, I have a couple friends that helped me along the way. And we jumped into this remodel process on this house. And it needed to be redone from the ground up. And I can't tell you how many dark days I had in that home. And it took us a year and a half to remodel that house. 2 years from start to the time we sold it. And when I say I was underqualified, whenever I say I was grossly overwhelmed, dark times, those were some wilderness years in that house. But I did it wholeheartedly. I did it as worship to God. I gave it everything I had. There were days I was in there like, Gary, you're crazy. Why did you do this? But God was faithful. And so after a year and a half, we had completely restored that house. And God just showed me, it was like, this is like your life. It was a dump. No one saw anything in your life, but I've taken it and made it beautiful. And so it was pretty cool. And about halfway through the process, God spoke to me and he said, Gary, this is not the house you're going to do the ministry in. I've got something else for you. And I was not happy to hear that, to be honest, because I was like, man, I've done all this work. Like I'm this close to getting this thing finished. Like this is going to be the house to do it in. He kept telling me, nope, I've got something else. And so I finally submitted to that in my heart, and I went and got my realtor's license so that I could sell the home. And then I said, well, if I get my realtor's license, until I get to the wherever the forge is going to be, I can maybe do real estate. But none of these things have ever been my heart. Flipping houses, remodel work, real estate work, man, the forge, reaching people and seeing their life change has always been in my heart. And in this season, man, of being in that house alone, working by yourself, God's was able to speak some things to me and show me some things that I was always too busy whenever I was in full-time ministry to be able to see. And some of the most important things that he showed me in this time was just where I'd been with my family, that I had neglected my wife, I had neglected my sons because I was just so strung out in ministry. And I was a good dad. I love my kids. I love my wife, but I just wasn't aware. I wasn't present like I should have been. I wasn't the help in the home that I should have been. And then so I quickly devoted to, I was like, man, I'm going to restore that. Thank you, God, for showing me that. And even though it was the hardest 4 years of my life, this last 4 years, it's been the years that have forged some of the most beautiful things in our personal lives. I've been able to restore my relationship with my wife, my boys. It's good. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for these 4 hard years. So in January 2020, the house sold. Man, you talking about happy. So happy. The house finally sold. And so we put that money to the side and we just kept looking for God's direction of where we're going to do the forge at. And then I just jumped off in. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this real estate thing. And so the house sold in January. 1 month later, February, I get a phone call from a lady who I had shared the vision of what I wanted to do with the forge years earlier when I was still on staff at the church. And I hadn't seen her since. And I get a phone call and it's her. And she says, hey, Gary, she said, our church is wanting to possibly sell a building that I think would be perfect for what you're wanting to do that you told me all those years ago, if that's something that's still in your heart to do. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to see the building. And so I go and I look at this building and it's like huge. And then I step in it and I'm like, oh my God, it's perfect. It's perfect. Everything is set up perfectly. Everything is perfect. And like way more than I could ever even dream of like stepping into. And so I made an offer and I could only go so high on that offer. And I knew it wasn't going to probably be the highest offer, but it was the number that I had in my heart that I felt at peace with. And so after I made that offer, I think everything that could happen to discourage me, to make me try to make me believe that it was never going to be possible for me to have that building, I think it did happen. Just one discouraging thing after another, an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. But in my heart of hearts, I was anchored. There were days where I was just like, man, am I crazy to even believe that I could get this place? If I'm crazy, God, just let me know I'm crazy and I'll let it go. I'll quit believing. I can't tell you how many nights I would drive to that building and I would sit in the parking lot and I would just crank the worship up and I'm just worshiping God. I'm crying out to God. I'm crying out for the lives of broken people that could be changed in that building. And I was just thanking God that he chose me to be able to do that, and thanking him that like every promise that he showed me that I would be able to help those people would come to pass. And I was just thanking him that he was that I just know he's faithful. I know you're going to be faithful, God. And also I was kind of hoping that no one was going to call the police and say there's some crazy man in the parking lot of this building with the music blaring. Looks like he's having a fit in there. But I just trusted. My heart was anchored. Even though my emotions was crazy, sometimes I thought I was crazy. My heart was anchored to the one that made the promises. And in that time period, like I would get phone calls from people I knew that would be in the building looking to buy it and say, "Man, I'm in this building and I think it's perfect for what you were wanting to do." And I would say, "Well, is it the building, at this address?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, I already put an offer on it." And they're like, "Well, what did you offer?" And I would tell them, and they're like, "You crazy? The offers are going to be way more than what you're offering." And I'm like, and I would say, "Probably so." And then they would ask me, "Well, what's your plan?" I said, I'm just trusting that no matter what happens, that the building is going to come back to me, that I'm going to get it for what I offered for it, and that I'm going to do in it what God has put in my heart to do for people. And so during this time as well, over the course of 2020, while I'm like in this tug of war with this building, God had just began repositioning my heart to go back to the front lines again. Repositioning my soul, my mindset, my network of relationships. Man, I've met a lot of good people this year that are involved in recovery. They have a heart for God. They have a heart for people, like true hearts for people, that have the right motives. And he just really started prepping me to going back to those front lines again of ministry. And the umbrella that I told you earlier that I felt like he had put up, that just all the calls stopped, that no one was reaching out. It was like he slowly began to close that umbrella. The calls started happening again. "Gary, I need help. Man, I'm struggling with this. I need to get in treatment. I need to get help." Opportunities to speak, to teach, to serve in these recovery type settings began to find me again all at once. It was crazy. But in all that, fear gripped me again. And it was the fear that I was going to make those same mistakes with my family again. It was the fear that I was going to get too stretched out helping everybody else, that I was going to neglect my own family. And so I let that fear kind of creep in. And so I started resisting and pulling away from these opportunities. And then one night, I was just crying out to God about this. I was scared to death that, like, man, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to do wrong by my family. And God spoke to my heart as I was crying out to him. And he said, "You know what? I've forgiven you, Gary. Your wife has forgiven you, Gary. Your kids, your sons have forgiven you, Gary. The only person that hasn't forgiven you is you. You need to forgive yourself, because it's time. It's time for you to step back into what I've called you to do, but you've got to forgive yourself, or you're going to be gripped with fear. You're not going to give your whole heart to it." And in that moment, I could see what I couldn't see before, that I really hadn't forgiven myself, that I still was beating myself up, that I still did see myself as that same guy that made all those mistakes with my family. And I realized in that moment that I'm not that dude anymore. I'm not that same man that made those mistakes with my family, and that it was time. And so in that moment, man, I surrendered that. I gave that over to God. And then I was like, "Let's go. Let's do this. It's time. It's what I've been built for. It's what I've been formed for. It's what I've been positioned for." And I know there's a lot of people God's going to connect me in this season that have the same kind of heart, that wants to make a change in people's lives. So then back to the building. So after this it's a 10-month roller coaster ride of waiting on this miracle to happen with this building, up and down. Like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Am I crazy? Am I not crazy? I'm trusting God. I got the phone call that they had accepted my offer on the building. And you talking about stoked, you talking about crazy, you talking about geeked up. Like, I was like just blown away, grateful, thankful. And so then after we closed on the building, I found out at the closing that there had been 3 other offers on the table with my offer. And all the other offers were for way more money. and that the owners of the building had prayed about it, and they decided to reject all the other offers that were for more money and accept my offer, because they believed that what God was wanting to use that building for was more important than making that extra money. And so all these things that God has promised us and shown us along the way over the years, one by one, we're getting to see them come true in front of our eyes. So that brings me to the forge. The forge, which is the reality of the dream. It's the reality of the vision. It's the reality, the fulfillment of the promises that God has caused to burn in our hearts for all these years. We're here. We're here, and we're excited about it, and we got a lot of plans, a lot of plans. We have a lot of vision. So what's the mission? What's the details of the forge? And I'm gonna let you know that. You can hear those on the next video. But like I said, I just wanted this video to be a little history, as short as I can do it, 20 minutes, of the journey, just so you can know how much it means to us, how much the people that we're going to serve mean to us, how much we believe in what we're going to be doing here, to reach people, to help people. And also, I wanted to encourage you guys to never quit. Man, don't give up on anything that you feel like God's put in your hearts. No matter how overwhelming you may be, how overwhelmed you may be at times, how underqualified you may feel at times, no matter how dark it may get at sometimes, no matter how many years you may feel like you're in the wilderness, I encourage you to just give yourself wholeheartedly to wherever you're at in the process, and do what you got to do for now, but to treat it as worship, and don't let go of the promise that God's put in your heart. You're not forgotten. God is faithful. And if you don't give up, I'm telling you, He's going to bring you to everything He has promised you in your life. Man, thank you guys for caring enough to watch this video. And just keep your eyes open, because the next video I'm going to show is it's going to let you know about the mission. It's going to let you know about the details and how you can be involved, how you can help. And I'm looking forward to giving it to you. The Forge.